Are you crazy?
Maybe we want to start the podcast. I guess, people will want to know what this is about. Honestly, it's still cloudy in my head. Mm-hmm. But what I think the gist is there's so much noise online today. There's so many different sources of information. It's hard to know where to go to get accurate, factual, trustworthy info, especially on the topics that are most important to people. And I think today we're going through a very difficult period where we've got a lot of forces that seem to be working against us, whether it's cost of living, whether it's just the political sphere, whether it's the economy, all these things seem to be going wrong at the same time, medical care, healthcare. Mm-hmm. So I think between us, we came up with the idea of putting together a show which would do some investigation and come up with what we feel is an insight into what's really happening beyond this noise. And that's what we come up with. And I have a list of the topics that maybe we want to cover on the show today, which is I think the format for the show is going to work really well if we break it up into topics. So we do like 6 topics every episode, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were able to prepare any things for the show, Hilary, but what did you think about covering? Because we've got some here, but do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Well, what really grabbed my attention and has been the forefront of what I've been skimming over and reading through is, the whole J&J, a biomed takeover, Twitter, Elon Musk, and the whole Pfizer COVID, revelations, and how the leftists, the liberals, the Democrats are just losing their minds. And excuse me, just the violence, the very apparent violent reactions from that side, from the left side, as opposed to the response of, the conservative side over the past year. There's been such a drastic difference in those two. And those are the 3 things that are top of mind for me that I feel I would be more confident speaking on and sharing in terms of preparation. I haven't been able to thoroughly prepare for it just because there's just so much we've all been dealing with, but I am committed to this. So moving forward, I will be able to prepare much better. So.
Cool. Well, I think Clement's dropping in and out. He's playing cat and mouse. But no, Twitter is definitely something I want to talk about. That has obviously been, garnering a lot of the headlines and attention on social media the last couple of weeks, given Elon's final takeover and his decisions that he's been making, which are very interesting. I have a lot of opinions on that. And then obviously the midterms are today.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. I think a lot of people are expecting Republicans to sweep the House and potentially the Senate, and that could be have a lot of profound effects on the Biden administration his last 2 years. I think it has a lot to do with education and inflation, obviously. And I think Democrats have handled those things very poorly. Would love to talk about Rishi Sunak in the UK. It's been a little weird what's been going on there. 3 prime ministers in like 2 months.
Yeah.
British pounds being incredibly volatile.
I'm kind of torn, and I'm not from the US originally, so I wonder if it even makes a difference when you vote for one side or the other, right? Everything always seems to be so much better on the other side when you get towards the end of a term that's gone particularly poorly. Does voting for Republicans actually make a difference? Are these promises that are going to be fulfilled? And this is really diving deeper rather into, I think, one of probably the systemic challenges that we are going to have to overcome if we're going to get a democracy back, which I think most people want, right? Most people want to have the ability to have a say in what happens in their country. Most people still believe that politicians and civil servants are actually serving us and we're not serving them, the other way around. And so my question really is, and this might be a controversial thing to say, but I don't know if it makes a difference to vote left or right.
Oh, Clement, you have to pick a side.
Yeah, right.
It's exactly. A or B. Right. There's no in between.
Neutral. Yeah, it can't be Switzerland on this one.
What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think there's hope in the Republicans at this point?
You know, I wouldn't say I would just vote for a party necessarily, because there are some Democrats who are seeing, you know, the exaggerated, well, the extremes that the left has gone. I mean, we haven't really moved. It's more like the line has been moved. And this might be something you've heard a lot of people say, you know, it no longer means the same thing when you say I'm a liberal or I'm a Democrat. It's not what it used to mean maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I used to be a liberal. And I mean, don't forget the news, you know, company that I worked for was a very liberal company. And so when I came here, my mind was changed by actually living here and seeing how things were. Prior to that, all I knew was what, you know, the news that I had read and that I delivered and that I received from all my sources. But I think living here and being on the receiving end of these policies, they tend to change your perspective. And it becomes, I hate this word, it's such a buzzword, but it becomes a more nuanced decision to make, you know? But if I were to choose between the two, I think I would rather err on the side of caution and be more conservative with risks that we take. Because it's like cooking. If you put too much salt, you can't take it out. You can always put more salt in, but you can't take that salt out. So as far as the laws and the bills that they pass, the more extreme laws and bills that they pass, the more that they allow, it's harder to pull back from that. You know, like this whole drag queen story hour. How do you undo that in schools? How do you make children?
Is that something they put through as like a mandatory thing?
It's not a law, but they're allowing it. And the fact that there isn't a bill out there that just sort of does like a nationwide protection for children is concerning a lot of parents. But then there are parents who actually bring their babies to these, you know, drag queen brunches. And so it's hard. Like what Brandon was saying, it's difficult. He's got his opinions on both sides, and so do I. But I just feel like you can't detransition children once they've taken those puberty blockers, once they've cut off those parts of their bodies. You can't put those back. So, you know, it's those cases where I feel like I wish they wouldn't go to such extremes, because if they wanted to, give them the freedom to do it. But the pressure has just been so great. So,
yeah, I like that you still have faith to some degree in voting. I want to as well. Like I've been retweeting, you know, politicians' tweets that I think they could do a good job. I've been retweeting them when they're asking people to go and vote. I think it affects me, even though I'm not in the US, because it is such a powerful decision maker when it comes to global politics, that everything that happens in the US seems to have some kind of a repercussion around the world. And obviously everyone wants to, like I said, to have freedom and democracy and some good governance. So what do you think, Brandon? What are your thoughts about the situation with the midterms and the future?
I think it's pretty clear which way it's going to go. I always describe politics in the US like a pendulum. It always picks up momentum. And every few years, I like to say about 6 years, it'll swing one direction far left. It'll swing the other direction far right. You know, every few years, you'll get a supermajority of Republicans in the House. And then you'll get a stacked Congress for the Democrats and, you know, Republican president, Democratic president. It doesn't matter too much. I think this is just how the system works. In the US, we live in a democracy where things are fairly 50-50 down the middle still. And that's good. The problem with democracy is you don't get a lot of consensus. You don't get a lot done. There's always a lot of gridlock because people don't agree with each other. But that's what, you know, makes America as a voting system very fair. And unfortunately, you know, both sides want to kind of take full control so they can implement their ideas. And My family has always been very conservative, very Republican. And in a lot of ways, I've leaned towards those values too, but I don't identify as Republican either. I think if they were to take the presidency and stack the courts and win over the Congress, they would put a lot of conservative laws in the power that are very bad for the country, that don't allow it to progress in the way it needs to. Same thing with the Democrats. And we've seen that drastically in the last 6 to 8 years. Actually, the whole past decade, they've been very radical in some of the things they want to do. And that's why I think the pendulum's swinging back again. Inflation's one, but other than the economy, education has been another one. When you're teaching little kids about whether or not they should be a boy or a girl, and confusing them on things that, they shouldn't really decide until they're at least an adult, gets very, very controversial. And a large percentage of the voting base in major swing states are stay-at-home moms, suburban moms, wives, suburban wives. And those are the ones that usually have kids. Those are the ones that usually have those that are in the schooling system, and they can relate to it the most. And I think they're very fed up too. And I think that's something that's not going to be talked about a lot, but it will be a big part of the vote for a lot of these states.
You know what I find interesting? I find it interesting that every time, there seems to be an election vote or some kind of vote for the Senate or the House. It's almost like possible that the miscount would have gone either way. So it's so close is what I'm trying to say. And I can't get my head around why that seems to happen every single time. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, this is impossible. How can this be every single time? But then I kind of think to myself too, we live in these echo chambers online. So you subscribe to one thing and it leads to another thing, and that leads to another thing. And eventually, before you know it, all the things that you're subscribed to generally say the same thing. And I've noticed that about my feed. And I try to subscribe to the opposite way of thinking. Like I'll follow AOC and I'll follow a bunch of other Democratic politicians and pundits just to see what they're talking about. I'll follow Bernie Sanders, Robert Reich, and all these people. Even though I don't agree with a lot of the things that they say, I'll follow them. But even having done that, most of the stuff I see online is really all about one way of thinking. And now, I was raised a Christian. I have Christian values and principles. And the way that I see it is, I agree with both of you. It's not in any way productive in any shape or form to be teaching children things that they aren't even ready to hear yet. They don't even understand what the hell they are. And so you've got this huge confusion, like was mentioned many times so far. So again, I don't understand what's happening. What I'm trying to say is, do you think there's election fraud? Do you think that this is a real thing? Do you think, if it is a real thing, do you think people know about it? I feel like there probably is. They mentioned recently that it would take a long time to count these votes, possibly in certain states, which a lot of people are kind of very confused about and don't seem to think has any how would you say it? It kind of alludes to something malicious going on in the background. So what do you guys think about election fraud?
You know what they say, it's not about who votes, it's about who counts the votes.
Yes. It's almost like they're announcing what they're about to do. They're announcing their move without really announcing it. It's like those open confessions where people think, oh, there's no way they would say this out in the open. It must not be true. But there's that relief where, oh, I've said it. I told you guys, but so casually and in passing that people were like, that's not even a confession. Like, you didn't really say it. Does that make sense? So Hillary Clinton has put out this video where she's just got her crazy eyes on, and she's like, there will be election fraud. And it's like, oh, well, then you must be speaking from experience. I don't know. And you have Joe Biden caught on a hot mic, and, he was saying something about how the greatest election fraud in history or something. I forget the actual words he used, but it was such a clear video. It was not edited at all. It was that entire block of his speech where he talks about there will be election fraud again, or they will steal the election again. So it's like, are you talking about when you won? Because I mean, the changes to the counts were pretty extreme, you know, and I was never a Trump fan either. I still have my old tweets, my never Trump tweets from way back when I had Twitter. So, you know, for me, it's like, it's just so obvious. And I feel like they've been doing these things underhandedly so much that they don't even realize they're not in hiding anymore with what they intend to do. And that's just from my perspective. I'm slack-jawed at the events that have been taking place. I am just slack-jawed over the things that they say where I'm like, do you hear what you're saying? Are you listening to yourself right now? And like Fetterman, for example, I can't believe people are going to vote for this guy.
I forgot about that.
Like, what do you guys think about Fetterman? The truth.
I don't have anything good to say. I mean, like, it's sad. It is sad that someone would be kind of pressured. Apparently his wife did pressure him a lot to do that speech that day where he really didn't make any sense whatsoever. And it was really difficult to watch because you can just put yourself, if you've got any kind of empathy, if you're any kind of functioning human being, you're going to cringe because you can almost feel the embarrassment. But he's obviously got a health problem. His stroke seems to be lingering. I'm not sure if he's recovered now, but that was just terrible. And if people vote for that guy, I don't know what that means. Does that mean people are ignoring the fact that this politician isn't cognitively functioning properly? Does it mean that they're just willfully blind to this whole charade? Does it mean that they're suffering from identity politics and they're just unable to go back on the kind of decisions they've made? I don't know, but I'm sure he's going to get votes in the end. Whether those are real votes or not, I don't know.
There's no way. It makes no sense to me. I think the common American citizen is not that dumb. I mean, it's like Joe Biden getting the biggest voter turnout in history for the presidency.
More than Obama. Seriously?
How? Like, I mean, say what you want about Obama. I mean, he was a fantastic speaker, and as an orator, he was incredible. I knew he was going to win. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whether you like him or not, he was very compelling for a lot of people. And you're going to say that Joe Biden had a record turnout?
Yeah.
Better than Obama, better than any other president? It's just crazy. The guy can barely stand up straight and he looks lost half the time.
He can barely go up the stairs without falling. He falls upstairs.
Yeah, that's crazy. He defies all logic.
I watched that earlier and I burst out laughing when I saw him fall up those stairs. It's terrible. There's a lot of memes out. I think he's probably the most memed president. He's the worst president, and he's the most memed president. I don't know which one's a better accolade to be able to say you've got.
I don't know. Hillary and Trump got a lot of memes too during that span of time, but more in favor of Trump than against him, I think.
Thug life. You know, I think my biggest issue with Biden is he's just outright lying. He just says all these things and no one defies it. You know, he claims to have been raised by a Black family. He claims to have been raised in a Puerto Rican community. And then he says, you know, he was raised in just so many things that are not even true. He says he met the guy who invented insulin. Insulin's not even an invention. Your body produces it naturally. So, and anyway, the guy who I guess was the one who, what's the word, like engineered the use of it or like discovered it, died in 1941. And Joe Biden was born 42. So just like all these inconsistencies where it's like fact checkers wouldn't have to go very far down a rabbit hole to know that what he's saying is untrue. Yet
is it true that fact checkers are now being triggered for his tweets?
Oh, I saw that on Twitter. Are you talking about the one where?
Yeah, is that actually true? Because I went and had a look and I couldn't find them on.
Well, the White House deleted that tweet.
Yeah, Twitter's doing fact checks now on certain tweets. There was a White House tweet claiming something for the Biden administration. Yeah, and Twitter fact checked it, saying it was incorrect. And they posted the law and everything and the year and, very clearly. And then the White House had to delete it. And then like in a press conference, they were like, oh, well, we have to add more context to this. It wasn't completely the way we wanted to phrase it. And I'm just like, you fuckers, like,
we
seriously.
need to have an audio for like eye rolls. We need to have like an eye rolling audio. Like, have you ever seen this show called Catfish? Are you familiar with that MTV show called Catfish? It's from way back. You know what a catfish is, right? It's a person who pretends to be someone. So Neve, he's the host of that show. Every time he hears these stories of like, how do people fall for people online, even in this day and age, he does this eye roll thing where he goes, because he's so fed up. Like, it's 2022. You're still falling in love with strangers online. And I feel like how I feel is how he does that eye roll thing. So I feel like we need to come up with an audio for an eye roll.
We'll find that sounds like something like that.
We should have an animation for the show. And you get some eye rolls like in the corner.
But to add to what Brandon said about that White House tweet, it's that IRA. Yeah, it's the Inflation Reduction Act. Because Biden, the White House is claiming credit for, your Social Security, like what you're going to get out is going to actually be better because of Biden. And that's when, there was fact checking on Twitter saying that's not true. He's not responsible. But at the same time, you have his press secretary, KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre, who's just even worse than what's her name, the circle back girl, Peppermint Patty. Jen Psaki, yes. She's even worse than Psaki because she just like blinks her eyes, looks at her binder. She cannot answer without looking down. A simple yes or no, she can't give it. And like outright lies just come out of her mouth. And I think that's what infuriates people and why a lot of Democrats are starting to move to the other side. Because they're like, guys, this is clearly not true. But many people are like, no, it's totally justifiable. And I think that's what's got a lot of, people on the left fed up.
Yeah, they seem to think it's okay to keep lying. And I think they've gotten away with it for so long that's probably why they keep doing it. And it's interesting now that you've got Elon Musk owning Twitter. A lot of people were a little concerned that he, was bait and switching people with his promises to protect, the fidelity of truth and the facts. But it does seem to me like there's movement in that direction. And to have the White House's tweets fact checked is just, oh God, it feels so good to be able to witness that.
That's a big win for democracy. Like that's so needed for the public and the private sector to be able to say, hey, that's not correct. And you uphold them to the truth a bit more. So I like that. I think that's something I hope to see a lot more of, especially with politicians. It'll be very good for people. And he even has prevented, banning of certain individuals and senators that are running right now, Republican senators. That were kind of like on the cusp of being removed or shadow banned on Twitter, like probably in an effort to suppress their voter base. So I really hope Elon, with everything he's talking about, can put together some kind of committee, which he says he's doing, to keep it balanced and so that it's not overly progressive and like they're trying to curate whatever the truth is or whatever the discussion is, especially when it comes to election day. That's how it should be. So,
yeah.
Did you see what he did to Kathy Griffin?
No, what did he do?
Her account was suspended because she was impersonating Elon Musk. So she changed her username to Elon Musk. And you know how she still had that blue check. So her account was suspended because of that. And then someone tweeted like I guess a screenshot, was it Clement, a screenshot where he suspended her account, and they said, oh, Kathy Griffin was suspended from Twitter or banned from Twitter for impersonating Elon Musk, and Elon responds by saying, no, she's banned for impersonating a comedian.
He's so witty, and I love the fact that he's not afraid to get involved and actually have discourse with people. It's not all comedy. Like, it would be weird if it was all just joking. He'd kind of like, that would make me a little uneasy, but
he brings a little bit of levity though. He's so funny, like a little bit of joy back to the world. Like he's walking into Twitter HQ with a sink in his hand. And then tweeting,
sink in.
And then
I really love that.
Then tweeting about he's going to, toss out everything, including the kitchen sink. And he's just funny. I love that guy.
What was it that he said about Bill Gates? He said something like Bill Gates, eliminates your boner or something like that. I remember hearing that on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Of course, it had to be on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, but that is really funny though.
He's the only guy in the world that can shoot rockets into space, solve the car problem by building electric cars and cutting down on emission, take over Twitter, fix democracy, and then make a masturbation joke the next day to 100 million people.
Leave it to Elon Musk. That's just crazy. But, people were saying, Twitter is going to be a cesspool now that Musk is in charge. And the funny thing is you have people who are just sort of parroting the same things. And then you've got other people saying, liberal here. But let me tell you, it was a cesspool way before Musk took over. And he's actually undoing a lot of that.
It's been a mess. You know how many bots and scammers are just flooding Twitter and the Twitter accounts and sitting on usernames and handles, and it's happened to me so many times. I post something and I get like 5 bots jumping on, offering money for something or trying to get people to click on discrete links or just weird stuff. And it's crazy to me because it should be easy to identify. Like, I can tell it's a bot. Why can't Twitter tell it's a bot?
Yeah.
And why can't this get cleaned up? And it really dilutes the quality of the platform. And he's talking about, making Twitter like $8 a month, talking about different verification methods potentially. I kind of am in line with that. I don't think you have to charge $8 a month, but you should verify your identity, I think. I think you should be able to prove who you are with like your license, your ID, and then maybe your address or something, like ways to show that you're real, I think should be implemented immediately.
So he mentioned recently that many advertisers had pulled their budgets from Twitter. So I think what he's doing, and it's genius, that's a great way to immediately get revenue, because you know what people are like. They've got to be verified. They've got to have that check. It's like a brand. And I think it works really well. It's going to generate a lot of revenue for them. But yeah, I mean, it's, we could talk all day about Twitter. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops. I mean, I'm using it a lot more. I think Twitter had its most busiest period just after Musk took over, which makes a lot of sense. And if his goal is real, if it's what they're aiming for, which is to make Twitter the most accurate source of information on the internet, I think that from what I can see, they're making their way there. Like the imposters, it is a big problem, and there's an argument that he's turning into a snowflake, and this is all ego based. From what I can see, if someone tweets something and their name says Joe Biden, and you end up believing it's true without looking at their Twitter handle and making figuring it out yourself, because you got to do some investigation there, then I think that's a problem. So I think he's moving towards an incredibly accurate, hopefully, platform when it comes to information, which is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give people, we're trying to take the veil away from a lot of the confusion people are seeing. Yeah. What do you guys think about Rishi Sunak? Because you mentioned you want to talk about that guy, and I definitely want to talk about that guy.
Yeah, I think we should talk about it. Now, this is 3rd PM in 2 months. And I think we should talk about what happened there as well. So the lady that came in, apologize to her, I don't even remember her name. It happened so fast. But she came in as prime minister, and she wanted to cut taxes to help the British pound and help the economy. And she made this rookie mistake of not cutting government spending at the same time. And so the government was overspending and not bringing in enough capital, and it crushed the British pound almost immediately. And within 2 weeks, she went from being moderately liked prime minister to being one of the most disliked prime ministers very, very quickly. And then, a month later, she's pretty much on the cutting board and she's out. And then Rishi gets in, and this is a guy that's got a lot of close ties in the financial world. He's very close to the Bank of England. In the corporate world, he's very wealthy. He's Indian, which is different for a lot of people there as well. Mm-hmm. And he's been very in favor of new types of technology. He's part of a very large hedge fund that I think is the primary investor in the Moderna vaccine. This guy's got a lot of ties in a lot of places that would make me uncomfortable if I lived in the UK, especially given a lot of things Clément has shared with me about it moving towards some more socialist laws and social credit and things like that. And he's been the biggest advocate for CBDCs and nationalized digital currencies, which would just amplify a social-based system, socialistic system, and could be very detrimental for the UK. So I'm very concerned. I think in the short term, he might be good for the economy, might give it a little bit of a boost. He knows what he's doing, but in the long term, it could be very dangerous.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, just because I am following British politics, I've learned quite a bit about this man over the last month or so. And well, first of all, like you kind of said, he's unelected, just like the previous prime minister, Liz Truss, who said that she's a fighter and she does not give up. And then she said, I'm resigning. And there's a meme where those two things are just
I saw that one,
which really is hilarious. But Rishi seems to be, like you say, he seems to be a bit more business than Liz. So, maybe he will do things that are effective, but who knows if he actually believes what he's saying. He may actually believe that this is the best course for people to, how a lot of these people, these politicians, they end up believing what they say, even though what they say has been influenced heavily by, let's say, the World Economic Forum or, these elite globalists. Right. So Rishi is not a poor man. He's worth around £700 million on paper, apparently, which is more than twice the net worth on paper of the King Charles that we have. So, he's not, he doesn't need any money, right? He doesn't need to represent the people, let's say, because he's already got everything he probably needs in terms of security. So already there's a bit of a question mark why someone that wealthy and that connected to these organizations would want to be the prime minister and why they even got there in the first place. I keep coming back to the whole thing, and I'm sure people have thought about this too. Why is it that at least in the UK politics, the only candidates we ever really get are those that have gone to what you would call the Ivy League universities here? Why is it that we only ever get a small group of ultra wealthy, aristocratic, connected families to run for, the most important position in our democracy, let's say. And it just blows my mind how, more people don't ask questions that perhaps you guys and I ask, which is, what's the truth? What's the truth behind all of this? What's the real story here? I'm concerned by the fact that he has apparently got, his family has invested heavily into a company called Infosys, which I'm not sure if you mentioned, Brandon, because my internet was kind of dropping out. But that company is said to have made significant development in the area of social credit. So having a social credit system, technologies around that system. And again, this is what I've read, so I'm not saying this is a fact, but apparently they are heavily invested in that kind of developing that kind of technology, which makes sense. If Rishi Sunak is believing the things he's saying, then he's going to actually be able to raise the value of that company and also usher that technology in. So really, the problem that we have here, I think, rather than let's say with past prime ministers, is that we seem to be on a very clear trajectory for having some kind of credit system that China has. Even if it doesn't start out that way, you really don't want to let it through the door, because once it comes through the door, it's very difficult to stop. Also with central bank digital currencies, if we let them implement those, let's say, in the European Union, it's going to be really difficult for people who live in the European Union to actually get out of that system. But the cool thing is, there's a lot of resistance to it. This episode is one example. People, generally speaking, I think they understand that government shouldn't have more control than it does already. And the only way they're going to get this to work is if everybody uses CBDCs, because if there's a country or a continent that doesn't buy into it, then everyone's just going to start using their currencies and their systems as much as they can. It's not that possible for people who are kind of hardwired into let's say the European Union. But those are my thoughts about Rishi. I don't appreciate it. I think that since I got back to the United Kingdom, I've noticed, from living abroad for so long, and with my recent visit to Florida, which I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed the people and the freedom that I felt when I was there, what I've noticed about the British population is they've lost their will to stand up for things that they should be standing up for. And I really hope that gets reversed, because I remember a United Kingdom that was very much able to stand up for what was right and what was, representing the people. And that's how we won the war. That's how we were able to overcome that evil. But nowadays, men have lost their balls, and I guess women are more interested in other things. So we have a really big cultural problem, and that's not by accident either. I think that's all by design. So I'm going to stop ranting and ask you guys what you think about what I just said.
No, I'm totally in line. The UK politics is not something that I know very, very well, but I've been trying to brush up on it as much as I can, especially recently, because it's very important with what's going on across Europe right now, especially with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and inflation impacting multiple different industries, the dollar getting incredibly strong against various currencies around the world, and certain technologies getting implemented, digital money, central bank digital currencies. I think there's a lot of things at play in a very crucial time, in a very critical period of time, where if technology gets implemented incorrectly, it could be detrimental economically and globally. And it's something that I worry about every day, because you have people that don't understand this technology that are trying to wield it, especially when it comes to finance. Like, I don't know how much you guys know about CBDCs, but
yeah, let's outline it for people so that they understand what they're getting into potentially. Yeah.
So this idea behind a CBDC is a central bank digital currency. The idea is to create a money that's digital and built for, a digital age that we live in today, to make it more seamless, to make it faster, to make it more transparent, to make it cost less, to remit, to put into payment rails, and for wire transfers, whatever it may be, B2B, person to person. And there's a lot of potential benefits that are really good. And that's something that within the crypto industry, people have been, working on for quite a while now to build out. And there's a lot of good solutions. The problem with central bank digital currencies is it pretty much gives the central bank a reason to kill the commercial banking industry, because they would completely dominate the money supply. They wouldn't even need a treasury to rely on. They would just run everything. Two, they would have an insane amount of capital controls that they could deploy at any point in time. You don't pay your bill 1 month, they could automatically garnish your account. You don't pay your taxes, they could automatically take money. You have a social credit system and you do the wrong thing and lower your score. Maybe they can rescind one of your loans that you have that's outstanding that you might need for your business. They could fine you automatically. They can monitor what you're buying and what you're spending money on. Maybe you don't want them to have a record of all the sexual stuff you're looking at online or what you're doing. And, there's a worry about potential blackmail. What if that falls into the wrong hands, or tracking you and your whereabouts all the time? Like, there's a lot of serious issues that crop up with this, and it takes away your sovereignty as an individual over your own finances. And you just don't have the ability to make your own choices. You're going to be watched on by Big Brother all day long. And I don't think that's going to end well. And I think if they don't handle it right, even economically, like they put it into an economic model that isn't deflationary over time, that isn't sustainable, it's going to be very hard to change that too. A lot of this tech is set in stone. If you build a ledger, it's going to be hard to change. You're not going to have the kind of system today where you can just call upon the Fed to, inject trillions of dollars and save the economy, or to shut down the stock market for a day. Those capital controls go out the window. You get a different set of capital controls. There's a lot of things to be concerned about with that when you have new tech and you have prehistoric minds going at work with it. So I'm a little concerned.
Do you think that's what it is as well? Prehistoric minds? Do you think that, we hear a lot about at least I do, these conspiracies, let's say, even though they may be true, of everything that's happening now has taken years and decades to plan, and it's all part of a bigger picture, and it's something that's orchestrated and very carefully managed, which, if that's true, requires a hell of a lot of thinking and a hell of a lot of skill to be able to pull off. So do you think that, that's not the case? Do you think that these kinds of pushes are actually, coming from pretty dumb people in a sense?
I mean, if you look at who runs government, they're not young, bright people fresh out of MIT and Harvard. These people are like 60, 70, 80 years old that are falling upstairs. Where's all the bright 30-year-old, 35-year-old men and women that are, the best in their industry, the best in economics, the best in tech, the best in finance, that could solve all these problems that we have today? There's not a whole lot of them in government. And that's, I think, another big issue. It's one thing to be progressive. It's another to have new ideas and fresh minds and to have change. Right now, they're just holding on to a system that doesn't work very well. Most government systems use technology that's like 10, 20 years old. You ever walk into like the DMV and the computers are like 10 years old, or you go into a government office and they're using software from the early 2000s. It's like, what's going on? What is our money going towards? Like, that's why people don't want to pay taxes.
It's funny you ask, where are the best and the brightest? And I think that is where the TikTok generation has really undone us, and all the young, fresh, brilliant minds supposedly are too busy picking their pronouns for the day, and all the hard masculine alpha males we, I guess, used to have are now questioning their masculinity and are realizing, well, maybe I was, just because you have these passing inclinations and feelings, you're suddenly questioning the reality of who and what you are, including your genetic makeup. And if, and I don't mean to go off tangent, but if China's job, if their goal was to destroy America from the inside, they're doing such a bang up job. They're doing a great job, because all they did was distract us with TikTok.
And not just America, it's the Five Eyes.
I guess the world. Yeah. You're right. And all these women now, they're just twerking on videos with their children right next to them. And it's the whole degradation of society's morals. And I, as, now a more conservative, I guess I've always had deep down a conservative outlook in life, no matter how, I guess, liberal I used to be. There are still values I hold near and dear to my heart. But it scares me. This whole central digital control for me is like, oh my goodness. So it's like what PayPal did essentially, oh, we don't like what you said. We just took $2,500 out of your account. And inflation is already hitting everyone hard enough. The past 2 years with the supply chain issue, the baby formula shortage, people are having a hard time staying fed, feeding their babies, getting diapers, basic needs. We have so much to worry about. And I know that's not going to change, but to have another sort of level, another veil to work through, which is, should I just be in my best behavior all the time and walk on eggshells? Because if I say the wrong thing, I can't pay my mortgage, right? Like my loan's going to get rescinded, like one of the examples Brandon was saying. And that's just going to break the human spirit. I feel like the more freedoms we want to have, the less liberties we actually do have. So I think that scares me. The fact that I can't call HR, can't call the HR of my bank or customer service and say, I'm disputing this purchase. I did not make this purchase. It just scares me to not have that choice and that control over my own finances, and to know that my personal expression of, my thoughts now have to be judged by the same people who hold the money that I worked so hard for. That scares the living daylights out of me.
Mm-hmm. I think it really boils down to being able to educate people on these things. And so far, it's been really difficult to do that because of the control and the censorship that, these organizations have. The technocracy, so to speak, of all of the major tech companies colluding with the government and the private institutions that were unelected. It's really difficult to get the right education out there. But, my hope is that with Twitter and then maybe another platform and another platform, we're going to start to be able to win back slowly this freedom of information, and people will naturally gravitate back towards, that curiosity and that open-mindedness, I hope, where they can absorb things and change the way that they see things and maybe make some different decisions. So, with regards to the future, I'm hopeful. I'm trying my best not to be like pessimistic, because it's so easy to do that. But my faith in humanity seems to have been correct, because I can see people, good people, leaders starting to stand up and say enough. What's her name? That in Canada, there's is it the mayor or the governor of Alberta? I can't remember. The premier of Alberta. I don't know her name, but she recently said, we have no interest in being part of the World Economic Forum. They don't represent us. They've got no right to be able to tell us what to do. So they're not impressed, with their claims and their gloating over being able to influence politicians. So there's people like that. I'm following a lot of politicians actually who are starting to stand up and make a big sound, a big racket about what's going on. I think they're putting a mark on their back. So you got to give it to them. That's gutsy. That's really ballsy to be able to do that. I'm not sure if I could do the same thing. I hope that I could, but you got to respect these people and support them where you can. I think Trump is also putting a big target on his back by leaving all these hints. And he recently said, I think it was yesterday, that he's going to drop some big news. And I thought to myself, is he committing suicide? Is he martyring himself for people? Because that's something that's going to generate some friction in the system right there.
Yeah, he has a big announcement tomorrow. I think he's just going to announce that he's running for president.
Right, yeah.
I think he's just waiting for the midterm election results to come in, for those to be favorable. And then he'll come out, ho, 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 look at me, I'm running. I think we all know he's going to be running anyways. I mean, he feels like he got gypped. I think most people do. And I think he has a good chance to win it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think maybe he's what we need right now in the United States. With regards to, topics that I wanted to cover, and I wanted to cover all those topics, but there's one thing that I really enjoyed watching recently, and I could probably pull it up on the screen a little bit, but it's an interview between an independent journalist named Whitney Webb, who's done a number of interviews before, podcast episodes on the Tim Dillon Show and places like that. And she talks about the investigations she's done into people like Epstein. Mm-hmm. And she goes really deep down the rabbit hole, and apparently has very, very good, factual information, and vets the things that she learns so that she can put together. I guess she puts together a picture that a lot of us can't, because we just don't know these things. And so she did an interview with Glenn Beck, who, like him or not, really has given her a platform to be able to talk about some things that are very difficult to get on major platforms like YouTube, because, like I said, you're painting a mark on your back. But if I bring up this podcast here, let's see. So I'm going to share my screen, and then can you guys see this?
A campaign of lies can hide.
Can you guys see
You
that?
gotta switch the view from the 3-person layout to the one with the video.
Oh, I can't actually bring it up because I need to restart my Chrome browser so that it can actually record the screen.
If you send it to me, I think I can bring it up.
There's a link to this YouTube that I'm going to publish with this podcast episode, and I think everybody needs to, or should at least, give it a shot, because the information in here is just mind-blowing. I mean, she talks about that whole controversy with the Epstein scandal, but in a way that you've never really heard it explained before, and just how deep those ties go. I enjoy conspiracy theories. I'm not going to lie. I think they're very entertaining. And so I do understand there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to watch and listen to that isn't perhaps completely true. But when someone spends their whole life kind of investigating these things, and when there's so many answers, so many questions that have gone unanswered, right? Where's the list of the people? I mean, if we captured Epstein and we put him in jail and we put him on trial and we've got his girlfriend and we know what they've been up to, where the hell is that list? Why hasn't it come out yet? Well, obviously it seems to be that there's a lot of powerful people on that list. Mm-hmm. Who was associated with these people? Why have they mysteriously died in suicides? All of these questions seem to be to some degree answered in this podcast. So I highly recommend anyone who's watching this or listening to this that they check it out. Put the link in.
If you go to the bottom, I added the link and shared it to here. Yeah, there you go. And then I can play it on my end.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna
a campaign of lies.
The whole podcast, I think. I think Brandon just removed himself from the chat. We need to really polish our flow when it comes to showing content. This is the first episode. First time I'm using StreamYard. It's a very powerful platform. You can do so much with it. So I'm going to really spend some good time learning how to use this. Brandon showed me it yesterday for the first time. So I've had like one day to prepare for this.
You guys are awesome.
Technical issues. But you know what? I'm a big believer in just doing things really quickly and just getting things off the ground.
Yeah,
and
you gotta.
Improving it as time goes on and getting better at it. I was just explaining, Brandon, how, we've had like one day in earnest to actually prepare for this. But, I'm a believer that you just have to get things executed, just move, take action.
The ground running.
Place. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, sorry about that. I exited the StreamYard tab on accident. That's the problem. When you have too many tabs, I have like 1 billion tabs in my browser, and every time I add a new one, they get smaller and smaller, and they keep the little X button next to each one. I feel like that's a UI issue because I keep accidentally clicking out of tabs.
I have 1 million tabs open in my brain. I think that's just the woman brain.
That's a good way to explain 1 million tabs open in your brain.
Yes.
That's a good metaphor. I think we've covered a lot. I mean, we don't have to go through that interview. I'll just put it in the description. Next episode, we'll do a better job of kind of being able to present content. I personally would love to do a little segment in the episode where we show noteworthy social media reels and shorts and stuff that we find funny or that's been pretty impressive for us. And I'd like to get that going on a future episode. Also, maybe to finish this off, and I'm a big believer in trying to deliver as much value as possible. I like to finish it on a practical, productive note. I'm wondering if either of you have done anything consciously in the last week or a couple of weeks where you've been like, okay, this is where I need to be better. I need to do better in this area of my life. So I'm going to do this. Has there been anything that you've done over the last couple of weeks where it's taken some effort, but it's actually going to make you a better person?
I've started journaling again. I mean, I don't really have a lot of time, but I noticed that when I used to journal much more religiously, I had a better sense of self-awareness in as far as, am I burning out? Am I spreading myself too thin? Am I growing as a person? Am I being an asshole? So it gives me perspective on who I am and how I'm taking things as they go. But like I said, I and it sounds so cliche to say, I wish I had more time. I did not realize that marriage and parenthood really would take all of that time from your life. It's like insane. And my husband and I were trying for a baby this year, or I guess next year. It's been tough, guys. I mean, you can't be stressed out, but also you're like, oh, now's the perfect time. Let's go. And it's not the sexiest moment to try and, I mean, you got to set the mood, but sometimes it's like, we got to do it like now. You can edit that part out. But I feel like before all the productivity came, I had more time to do those things that better me. Like I had time to do yoga and soak some sun, do like some grounding and soak some sun and drink my raw milk and all that. But now it's like I get up and I squeeze in every extra minute I get in bed, just because I know as soon as I get up, I'm not coming back to bed until like 11 o'clock that night. So I think in terms of bettering myself, I've been taking more beef organ supplements to sort of fill the gap in my nutrition, because I've been so incredibly on the go. My meals have been straightforward. I saw that you're doing cold baths again, and I wish I could do that again, but it's been tough. So I would say just the little bits of journaling that I get to do each day to write down what were today's struggles, what were the wins today, keeps me on an even keel.
Yeah, and I mean, the beef organ thing too is interesting, because I've never taken those supplements. Do they really work? Do you feel like there's been a difference?
Well, I eat a lot of, I've always been a meat eater. I love eating meat, but I'm the only one who will eat liver in this household. And they're definitely not going to eat heart or, organs. So because I can't really consume all that I thaw out, I just decided to go for the desiccated form of it, capsules. I can't say it's such a big difference as like a cold shower or I don't know, whatever things other people do. But I noticed that when I take I've been drinking raw milk for the past, I guess, half year, and it's made such a difference in my skin and how I feel. Like I drink it first thing in the morning with my water and pickle juice, a shot of pickle juice, and I feel filled. So I take my raw milk with my beef organ supplements and I don't feel hungry. I don't feel the need to have a heavy breakfast because at least I have that protein, that shot of protein. The pickle juice serves to give me electrolytes first thing in the day. So I've got my salt content down. And those things are enough to keep me alert in the morning and to keep me going until I'm actually hungry enough to eat. So I don't believe in like, oh, you can't miss breakfast. I used to be a big believer, but I'm not anymore.
That's
organs are supposed to be really good for you. Mm-hmm. Have you seen what's his name, Liver King on TikTok? The guy that just lives this carnivorous lifestyle and he eats organs and eats
Liver King.
Yeah, Liver King.
You haven't seen this?
He's very entertaining. He's very entertaining and he's very intense. It's really funny. He did an episode with Logan Paul and it was really good too.
Oh wow! Okay,
and they were eating raw organs like on the show. I think he ate like some balls or something too. It was really funny.
Did you see Joe Rogan? Did you see Joe Rogan eat like, I think was it kidney or liver when he had Paul Saladino on his show?
Raw liver. Yeah, he gave him raw liver, which to be honest with you, I've eaten and it's not that bad. It's just the texture. I think people can't get through the texture. The taste is fine. I think if it wasn't so gooey, I think people would, just like raw eggs, eating raw eggs, people can't do that because of the texture. But it's just like an egg. It's just not cooked. That's it. The only difference.
Yeah. I like it better raw than cooked, I think. It's the mouthfeel. The mouthfeel of cooked liver, not the best thing.
No, I don't like it either. And I try not to do that. But I don't, I can't eat overly cooked liver and I can't eat under raw liver. So it's kind of like something in the middle there.
Let's cut it up into small bits and swallow it, like chug it back. right?
Just chug it back.
Chug it back down the hatch.
Could do the whole.
Can you blend it? Could you put it into like a drink?
So I've done it where I put it in my raw milk and made a smoothie where it's like raw liver and raw egg yolk in my raw milk.
What does that taste like? That's interesting.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It doesn't taste like anything different, really. I mean, I taste the raw. And the thing with raw milk is it's such a clean flavor. It doesn't taste like it's been the huge difference between that and the pasteurized milk. Massive. It's creamier. It's tastier. You know, you're like, oh, this tastes like it is good for me. And you don't really taste the egg yolk. You don't really taste the liver once you blend it. It's just thicker.
Wow, that's really interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'll try that, but I'll let you know.
I got a pretty strong stomach and I'll eat just about everything, but I've had a hard time trying to get into organs. Like I've tried multiple times and I think it's the texture for me. I'm going to try making a smoothie.
Yes.
Just blending it. I think maybe that'll work.
Let us know how that goes for you.
If you come in next episode, you're just like completely tanned.
You have to have it. Don't forget to tan your you know, sun your butthole. Sun your butthole.
You know, I would love to, but it would be weird if I went out in the freezing cold and just spread my legs right open. I think that'd be very strange.
I can't do it here. The neighbors are too close. We have hills. We have hills around us where there are houses. They'll be like, "What is she? Oh, free show, I guess." You know.
What about you, Brandon? Have you been doing anything that you've found that it's difficult to start, but you need to do it because you think it's going to improve your life?
Yeah, I thought about it quite a bit this morning. I think some of it I do unconsciously, which is good because I think you should unconsciously want to improve your life. You shouldn't be forcing yourself to try all the time. So I think two things. One, I like to streamline a lot of what I do so that I can have more time, especially in the mornings, because I have a girlfriend, I have a dog, I have a routine, I got a billion things and emails to check, and just getting my day started can be hectic. So I'm always like, how can I make my coffee faster but keep it healthy? How can I buy an appliance that maybe speeds up breakfast a little bit for my dog? Because I cook my dog food, chicken and rice, sometimes some beef, veggies, or quinoa, like yogurt and a bunch of stuff. And that's a process that takes some time, but I figured out ways to do it faster and keep it healthy. Little things, because every minute to me in the morning is really important. And then if I can maximize how much time I have in a day, that I can do more stuff. So I try to streamline as much as I can. And I just look for every little thing that seems a little tedious to do. And I'm like, how can I speed that up? There's got to be something I can do. And then I like to improve upon little things. So the second thing is I've gotten away from reading, which I used to do all the time. And I've just been so distracted. I haven't been reading at all this year. Nice. So I went out and find some books that I think would be really interesting to me. And then I just take some time in the evening before I go to bed and I read a chapter, half a chapter, whatever I have the bandwidth for, just so that I can distract my mind and learn something. Cause I think the more well-rounded you are, the better. And it helps me kind of take my mind off the day and de-stress, and then have a glass of wine or tea or something. I think for me, stress is the biggest thing, because if I get too stressed, then I'm just not productive. Little teeny tiny things, switching from granulated sugar to panela in my coffee. I think
what is that?
For that.
What is panela?
It's like sugar cane. It's similar to brown sugar, but it's like a sugar cane type of sugar. It's very common here in Colombia.
Is it like turbinado? Like turbinado cane?
I have no idea
sugar?
What that is.
I'm not sure. I'll send you a picture, but it's supposed to be better on your insulin levels. It doesn't spike your insulin. It's a little bit healthier. And it has about the same taste.
For your insulin levels is it's honey. I think honey works really well. It's got a specific flavor. Some people can't get their head around that flavor in their coffee, for example. But I have that with butter in my coffee. People call me crazy, but that's something people do. But I think it's really cool, man. You went back to reading. Reading for me really has had a significant impact. I mean, one of the things that I read recently was Andrew Huberman, who's that doctor on social media.
I love him.
Yeah, he's super, super smart and very, very good at explaining things. And I love his show. And one of his tweets recently basically was one of the best pieces of advice I got in graduate school was to, one, figure out how many hours of work you can consistently do while still maintaining good health. Stick to it plus or minus 1 hour, 5 to 6 days a week. And that's the kind of productivity that I think you can only really get by streamlining your lifestyle. So I totally get why you're doing that, because at the end of the day, if we're not productive, we're not going to be able to get the most out of this time we have here. And I am being super unproductive while I've been jumping between country and country over the last few months. And now that I'm finally in a place where I can settle down and have a headquarters, all of these things are kind of popping out when I'm reading them online. It's like my RAS, like Tony Robbins says, my reticular articulating system is activating. I'm seeing the things that my subconscious wants. So the reading, man, I think that's going to be a really good habit to get back into. Actually.
Oh yeah, I actually got a really good book to recommend. It's called The Harvard Business Review at 100, and it covers all the best Harvard Review articles in the last century. It's been really, really interesting to go through, and there's stuff from health to fitness to entrepreneurial type of things, business related things. It's very diverse, really, really kind of cool. I get like a new take on something every time I open up the book. And then trying to find more stuff, just well-rounded stuff. It doesn't even have to be stuff that I'm mostly interested in. Just take my mind off the world a little bit,
Yeah. Nice. That's a good piece of advice. I wrote that down. So maybe we'll put that in the description too. And we'll put the link for the
just a description,
the organ supplement too in the description. Why not, right? Let's just try and find an affiliate and start to make money out of it. For me, I mean, just to finish this whole conversation off, like I realized how much of a wimp I was becoming just by letting myself get into a lazy, unproductive, like I've mentioned, lifestyle. And I don't sleep very well at night if I realize that that's what's happening to me, if I realize that I've done less than I probably should have, or I've not spent my time wisely. So eventually it'll build up and I'll get to the point where I'm like, right, I got to make a change. So I think the fastest way for me to do that is to do something difficult every day. And the most difficult thing that I could think of was jumping in a cold shower in the cold United Kingdom in the morning when I wake up. And that is liberating as hell. I know that you've tried it before. I'm sure you get this euphoric feeling after you get over the hurdle. So there's like this hump where you feel like you're about to die because it's so cold and you're breathing like crazy. But if you can manage to get past that, what comes afterwards may surprise you. You start to feel pleasure. It's not, sexual pleasure or anything like that. It's more like a kind of like a deep feeling of satisfaction that, one, you were able to do it, and two, your cells just start to vibrate. I don't know. I can't find a better way to explain it. It's almost like your blood is flowing into places that it's just not been for quite a while. Your skin may go red, which further exemplifies that. And then leave it a minute or so. Some people even do, 20 minutes. I'm not that kind of a person. It depends how cold you get too. You get out the shower and your whole body is just tingling. And there's been moments where I just can't stop giggling because it feels so good. It's interesting.
Have you done it before bed?
I think I did it once before bed. I don't personally recommend it because it wakes you up. You know, it really does wake you up. Oh yeah, the cold will wake you. It will give you clarity of mind. The fog just disappears. It goes out the window.
The opposite effect on me. I can't remember if it
maybe
was.
You were in hypothermia.
It was. I was probably dying. I think it might have been Andrew Huberman who was suggesting, to try it before bed, because I also was doing these like icy cold showers first thing in the morning, and I understand what you're talking about. That feeling of I'm gonna die. So I do my yoga breathing, like breathe through the pain. And I remember seeing a video that talked about doing it before bed. So I said, but that's going to wake me up. But then the opposite actually happened. That feeling of warmth that comes after the initial cold, I was so ready for bed. Oh, and another thing to add is I've been supplementing on magnesium before bed at night.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned magnesium to you before, and that's really helped a lot. So the cold shower plus magnesium, and maybe throw in some ashwagandha in there, man, you are solid set for a great night's sleep.
Ashwagandha, what's that for? I mean, I can't remember.
It's a root that helps you to de-stress and helps you to ease. It's, I guess, I don't know if it's considered a nootropic. I think it falls under the whole like adaptogen category, where it helps you sort of de-stress and calm yourself down. And it really helps you to get yourself ready to unwind. So it's been a ritual for my husband and I at night, where he's like, okay, we'll take our magnesium and then as a drink, and then we'll take our ashwagandha in gummy form. And then in like about 20 minutes, we're just lights out. We're like, oh, wow, solid sleep.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it might be better than taking, melatonin.
Melatonin's terrible for you.
I did it for over a month, and I think it does give you some level of addiction and dependency, but, it works. So, it's better than, maybe it's better than smoking weed. I think weed disrupts your sleep as far as I know. But anyway, we've had a really long conversation. I think that was a really cool first episode. It's a good point where we can kind of cut things off and say goodbye. And, thanks for listening and watching whatever platform you're on. I had a great time. And I think this is going to be an interesting podcast moving forward as we get better at kind of the flow and everything. And there's a whole world to uncover with these topics. So I hope that people stick around and they subscribe and they like this video and help us out.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Had a great time.